Hello. Good evening, everyone, or good morning, or good night, wherever you may be. This is a Whiskey 4 Kilo Whiskey Sierra with a follow-up video on a 3.5 to 4 month review on the TYT, the 390. Before we get started with all the information of my experience with this radio, there seems to be confusion. I've been contacted by hundreds of different ham radio operators who are interested in this radio, who seem to be confused about what version this radio is. Somehow they think it's a 10-watt version. That is not the case whatsoever. So before we get into my experience with the radio, I want to make this crystal clear. At no time did I ever state that it was anything other than a 5-watt radio. So excellent radio so far. Excellent radio. So I want to be very clear on this. This is the entire model number. In retrospect, I should have taken the clip off to show you, but there it is. That should be clear enough for everyone to see the model. This is indeed an MD-UV390 Plus 5-watt version, not 10-watt, not boosted to 10 watts. There's this plus sticker right there. I stated in my previous video who I bought it from. So with that out of the way, let's get started. First thing I want to commend TYT on is battery life on this radio is, in my opinion, great. I've used this radio outside. I've used this radio on the go. I've used it on DMR repeaters, analog repeaters, and the battery is more than adequate for the price range of this radio. I have 30 to 40 charges on this radio, on the battery on this radio, and it seems to be holding the charge fairly well. So I've dropped the radio full send a couple times, and it's held up. I checked the antenna port after I dropped the radio, and it seemed to hold beautiful. So to hold in place beautiful. So kudos to the antenna port. It's strong. It literally fell right on there a couple times. I run the radio with the Nagoya, same Nagoya I had on there before. You can see the model and this little antenna here when I just use it in the house on the hotspots. Great little radio so far. Great little radio. Really impressed. Keeping in mind the price range of the radio. This is $100 to $130, $140 radio. I see the price has gone up a little bit. And I can probably imagine because of the demand, the buttons are still holding tight. This radio sounds great on DMR. It's great on analog as well. So another question that I've received on an email, apparently it wasn't clear what firmware version I'm running. So that's the firmware right there. I'm going to try to hold it as close as I can to the camera. Again, I'm new to YouTube videos, and everything I do is unscripted, and all the information I'm providing to you at this time is in real time. So I don't script anything, and I'm just trying to learn my way on YouTube here, trying to share information. So that's the firmware. Let's talk a little bit about firmwares. So I'm in the cybersecurity space and hardware maintainers, servers, etc. Firmware. I see a trend, and I get a lot of email. I'm on the latest firmware. I just did, updated the firmware twice in a month, or etc. Not only with this radio, but even with other radios. And I get this from veterans of the ham radio world. You should only be doing a firmware update if it addresses an issue you have. This is the same firmware version I had 3.5, 4 months ago. And the reason I haven't upgraded is because the radio works perfectly for me. You have to have a reason to do a firmware update. Obviously, if it addresses an issue, you do a firmware update. But if you're doing firmware updates blindly as soon as they come out, it's only a matter of time before you break your radio or something doesn't work for you. So that's just a little advice. That's just my take on firmware versions. I always read them, make sure they're going to address an issue. and you may not even have that issue. Another thing about these radios is you have to keep in mind that the hardware in these radios may change without notice, you know, and the revision of the hardware, so the components in here may change based on the manufacturer's ability to secure resources or secure materials to continually build these radios in a consistent way. So quality control is a big deal. So this radio is working on OpenGD77 100%. It has been working for 3.5-4 months now. So keep that in mind. And when you're dealing with firmware versions, it's very specific to the hardware in question. So if you try to do what I did here on a different radio, on a different piece of hardware, you're going to run into issues. So just a little tip there. Let's move on. I'm really happy with the radio. Really happy. Probably one of the best $100 investments I've made. I think I paid $119, $120 at the time. I absolutely love the radio. It works beautiful for me. I experimented with a couple of different color schemes here, and I settled for this one. And I'll try to remember where I got it from, but it's very difficult sometimes. It just goes through so many different things. I work on radios all the time. Not work on radios. I don't repair radios, but I have so many radios. I'm always changing settings, changing color themes. So mainly all my radios are Motorola. So my typical Motorola radio costs 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times as much as this radio. And this is still my go-to radio because it's so versatile with the OpenGD77 on here. The menu system is easy to navigate. You can easily type in a talk group on one of your DMR channels, etc. So, and I just love everything about this radio. The way it feels, the buttons, everything. So, yeah, just wanted to share an update. What else can I say? The only thing is, you know, that right there, you know, you're not going to get a perfect radio in its design. So this radio will tilt and fall all the time on you. So look on Etsy, and you know, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but they have stands, 3D printed stands for about $20 for these radios. So yeah, power output has not been modified by the firmware version that I'm running on here. It's about 5 watts, a little bit over 5. You know, it just depends. So just a little update on the TYT MD-UV390 Plus. And I did look on the website, OpenGD77 website. I'm not registered. I'm considering registering to share some of this information in a more formal way. It's just finding time to do those things in a proper way is important. I typically won't jump in and register and then not post anything or not find the time to do it. So before I register, I'd like to make sure I have a game plan on what material I will post on there and how I can contribute to the project. So kudos to the men and women at OpenGD77 who, you know, day in and day out deal with issues. But overall, I'm happy with the radio. Would I consider this radio as a newbie or as a new ham radio operator? Absolutely. I think even in the price range of $140, there are options out there, but I think it's hard to beat. The overall quality of this radio I maintain is good. Now, I want to talk a little bit about keeping things in perspective here. You're talking about a $140 radio. You're talking about, you know, TYT. Not knocking TYT, but, you know, they're not Motorola, they're not Yaesu, they're not ICOM. You know, the research and development team of all those other companies are far and beyond superior. Not to mention ratings of those other products are way and above what you're gonna get here with this radio. So keep things in perspective. You know, you're not buying an XPR 7550 Echo. You know, you're not gonna get that quality of a radio. But do you need a $600 or $700 radio? That's the question. Can you do what you need to do with this TYT radio? And you know, for most ham radio operators, the answer is yes. Now, what I did here, has it been replicated? You bet. I've helped 7 or 8 different ham radio operators in New Jersey, Here locally in the Florida Keys, there's 2 more exactly with the same software version. Some of them have updated and they still work, and I've warned them, you run a risk. You run a risk because as time passes, again, these hardware versions of these radios may change. And from what I understand, there's a 10-watt model or something to that effect out there. I have no clue what that's all about. I can't imagine it being the same as the 5-watt model, at least from an internal PA output perspective. I would imagine double the power would require some sort of hardware to be able to do that. So not to do that, but to, you know, to put that power out cleanly. So I don't know, not an engineer, but logic will tell you that if something is designed and engineered for 5 watts, that you're probably going to get around 4.5. And if you're saying that with software you can make it do 10, something's going to give. Something's got to give. And I understand it's not difficult to get 10 watts. But what about the battery? What about heat, dissipation, etc.? So those are things to consider. Again, when dealing with firmwares, you have to be specific to what you're talking about here. As I said before, this was a 9600 donor and a 380 and a 380 firmware, and I just showed you the firmware again. I'm to this day, I'm receiving emails saying, you know, hey, your video is misleading. No, my video is not misleading. I never said this was a 10-watt radio, and it's not. It's clearly a 5-watt radio. So, yeah. So overall, I love this radio. I love its analog speaker. Again, I listened to a couple of trivia nets on All-Star, and it's my go-to radio. So, here for the home. If I drop it, if it breaks, not too worried about it. So, still love the TYT UV390, MD-UV390 Plus. This is not the 10-watt version. So, what some other radios do, some of the other radios that I own that I think are worth mentioning here. This is a great radio. This is a well-designed, well-thought-out radio. This is the Anytone, the 878, the latest one. Without getting into the weeds of what it is, I love this radio. When I go on the road, if I'm going long-term, this is the radio I take. Excellent battery, excellent receiver, great DMR transmission. And what I mean by that is, no matter what hotspot I'm using, no matter what I'm transmitting to with this radio, a DMR repeater with an STM32, a repeater builder controller, this radio is very good. The TYT actually is a little off sometimes on different hotspots, but not by anything worth mentioning at all. It's within the margin of error, 0.03, 0.04. So even those BR numbers are extremely low. This I never see any issues at all. Anytone, I think, is probably the best Chinese radios coming out of China. I think Anytone are probably the best radios coming out of China. This is a $300 radio, so yeah, you're buying. This is superior to the TYT, but you're paying more, so that's something you have to consider. So you have to keep things in perspective. You know, are you starting out? Do you need this radio? So yeah, look them up. I also own the 578 Plus for all the advanced functions of APRS. And if you don't know the difference between a Plus and a Pro, there are differences in the APRS function. And I suggest you dig into those, because if you're serious about APRS, you're going to want a 578 Plus, not the Pro. Let's see, other radios worth mentioning that I own. This is one of my 7550 Motorola's Excellent radio. Now you're talking different tier. You're talking a different tier radio here. First off, this is a commercial radio. This requires some knowledge of programming, Motorola world. This is not for, you know, just gonna grab this radio and edit the talk group. And no, this is this is next level. Again, this is commercial quality, commercial build. It's aimed to the commercial space. You know, all my radios are within bands of proper operation. I do have 1 or 2 hex radios, but I don't even operate them on the hex range. But this is not an E model. This is one of my regular models here. So just want to show the 7550 Motorola Excellent radio, world-class DMR transmission and reception. So let's see. Another one worth mentioning here is these 6550 XPRs. Great DMR radio. The speaker's not that great. The speaker is a little tinny, but it's a commercial radio. So you have to understand you're not going to get the ham radio fidelity you're looking for out of these at least out of this radio. It's fine, but the TYT sounds better on analog and DMR. And that's because this radio has a smaller speaker. Sounds a little tinny at times, but it's an incredible radio. And you can pick these up for $125, $130 on if you look around. You know, most of them on eBay are being recased by a Chinese company that makes cases. It's pretty funny. But yeah, so these are great radios for DMR. Again, if you don't have the experience of software to program these radios, there's cost involved. With these radios, you have to buy the proper programming cable that goes here, that connects here, and it's not like programming a TYT or an Anytone or an ICOM radio. Typically, those manufacturers give you the software. You have to know what you're doing with Motorola. If you're going to be using any of these DMR radios on analog, you're also going to run into the barrier of not being able to transmit on 25 kilohertz unless you have the entitlement. You go through the course and you get the certificate from Motorola and you pay them for the 25 kilohertz analog channel only entitlement. And I do have that. I'm registered. I have a commercial account with Motorola just for that, so I can program all my Motorola radios on the analog side to be able to transmit on 25, you know, on the analog channels only. So I'm able to do 25 kilohertz. So this is the Motorola XPR 6560, another good radio that I love here. This is an older radio. This is my P25 Monster here. This is a Motorola XTS-3000, incredible radio. Some of these radios range in price all the way up to $3,000 plus when they were new. So incredible value left in these radios. If you don't care about the weight and the size of this radio, yeah, you can probably throw one of these radios through a front windshield and it will still operate. And no question in my mind, I can launch this through a front windshield or a side window and it'll still operate, because that's what it's built for. That's why these radios were $3,000 and $4,000, and the new ones and anything Motorola makes for public safety, there's a reason why they cost what they cost. You know, firefighters carry some of these different models into fires and the radios still operate. So there's a lot that goes into designing these radios and manufacturing them and testing them under extreme conditions and make sure they're going to operate. This radio is extremely clean on receive and transmit. The transmission of this radio under a scope is absolutely insane. The harmonics are absolutely clean. Very hard to find. You can spend $1,000 today on a modern ham radio handheld, you know, and you're going to find it difficult to be as clean as this is. I paid $100 for this radio. $100. This is a UHF model. This is an XTS-3000. I think it's Model 3. Excellent radio. Again, significant amount of time, research, and investment on my end for the programming cable and finding the program for it to be able to program. And it's not a walk in the park. Another issue, not an issue, but I use this radio specifically for P25. I'm typically listening to the Papa system or North America or worldwide. It took me 6 to 8 hours to learn how to align my MMDVM hotspot. And I was successful. So I successfully can transmit on this radio with less than a 0.01, whatever it is, percent BER on P25, and that's all I use it for. Batteries for these radios about $40. on eBay or Amazon. And I bought one of those. So it did come with an old battery from 2017, and it still ran. It still holds a charge again. Why? Because the research and development that Motorola put into everything that, you know, they put everything that they touched. And I say touched because Motorola's been bought, so I don't know that things are what they used to be. And that's just a side comment there. That's not a knock. I have XPR 5550s. I have 4550s, and many other Motorola Maxtracs. I have PM400s. I just built a repeater on 2 Motorola 1550s LSs. I'll have a video coming out on that. This is another good little radio. The FT70 Yaesu. It's a good little radio. It'll get you into wires X if you're within reach of a repeater. It'll also give you the capability of exploring YSF and the reflectors and using a hotspot. Excellent radio and analog as well. Excellent radio and analog as well. Big downfall with the FT70 Delta. If you own one, you already know. You better invest in a couple of batteries. You know, even at low power, it's just the nature of the beast. There's no sense in even going on about it. Yeah, battery life is not very good on this radio. So great little radio, excellent reception. Again, Yaesu. You know, you're talking $200 radio, in the range of $200 radio. A little bit more than a TYT, but again, this is for Yaesu System Fusion. This is not for DMR, so I want to be clear on that. I don't want to get emails saying, hey, I can't get my Yaesu radio to work on DMR. Why did you put a video out there? Yeah, I just wanted to say that. Anyways, excellent little radio, horrible battery. What can I say about the FT70? It's priced right, and I think the sales engineer at Yaesu have done a great job of getting your feet wet with the FT70. And if you own an FT70, you probably own an FT3, you probably own an FT5, you probably own an FTM 300, a 200. You're probably going to own other Yaesu products that will get you into the Wires X and the System Fusion system, and that's their goal. And I think they do a pretty good job. I also own a C4 FM repeater here in Key West, and it's up and running. And I'm very happy with the price that I paid for that. They're having a deal. Right now it's $700. You have to commit to getting it on the air for a year. That's fine. Why else would you buy a repeater? So anyways, thought I would share that mix of information. But this is the reason for the video. Would I buy this radio again? Yeah, absolutely. Even owning all the radios that I own. And I also own, by the way, cheap Baofangs and many cheaper radios even than Baofeng. The Quangchangs are pretty interesting radios. Always experimenting with those, the different things they can do. Would I buy this radio again? Yeah, absolutely. Once again, this is the firmware on the radio. Don't send me hate mail telling me that this is not true. This radio doesn't work. This radio absolutely works. I love it. And let's see.
A1SF.
That is a net in England.
The other one.
And all right, guys. Hope this answers some of your questions about the UV390, the MD-UV390 plus 5 watt. 5 watt, not 10 watt. Bought it 3.5-4 months ago. You guys got to see the video the day I received the radio. I opened the box. There's 2 videos. The opening of the radio box, and then there's me showing it on OpenGD77. It's not supported on the website. That's what the website says, that it's not supported, but it works. I took a risk doing that, and you are also taking a risk doing that. Understand, again, these radios go through changes that are not documented, right? I would assume that, you know, based on the manufacturer securing the parts necessary to be consistent and maintain a high quality control, that they have to sometimes change a couple things. So don't rule that out. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm saying just don't rule that out and understand what you're buying. You're buying a $120, $130 radio. You're not buying a Motorola. You're not buying a Kenwood. You're not buying a Harris. But it's a very capable little radio. GPS works fine. It's not the most accurate GPS. Battery life is okay with the GPS on. It's not terrible, but it's not an ICOM 51 Alpha with the GPS on. So that's an example of another radio that I do own that I absolutely love. So this radio here, it's an ICOM. Love this radio. This is one of the very first versions, ID51. It's not even a plus, but it's not the oldest version. It's the one above it, and absolutely mind-blowing. This radio, the capabilities, even to this day. I just recently went to Ham Radio Outlet and compared the 50 and the new one's a 50, and I also compared the 52, which is a color. And I still wouldn't buy that over this. Not for my needs. Anyway, 73s. This is whiskey, 4 kilo whiskey, sugar in Key West. Just sharing some of my personal thoughts and experience with the TYT. Hope you enjoy this video. I know it's a little long, but I thought I needed to clarify a couple things. Not clarify, because I really didn't say anything that led anyone to believe that this was a 10-watt radio or anything like that. Absolutely not. But just wanted to give an update on the radio, and still loving the TYT 73.